to story reading. Dad reads books, Dad reads stories from the collected short stories of Ruskin Bond. I'm almost through with this entire book, and now I'm at the last few stories. And tonight's story is titled Whistling in the Dark. The moon was almost at the full. Bright moonlight flooded the road, but I was tugged by the shadows of the trees, by the crooked oak branches reaching out towards me, some threateningly, others as though they needed companionship. Once I dreamt that the trees could walk, that on moonlit nights like this, they would uproot themselves for a while, visit each other, talk about some old times, for they had seen many men and happenings, especially the older ones, and then before dawn, they would return to the places where they had been condemned to grow. Lonely sentinels of the night, they had been condemned to grow. No, lonely sentinels of the night, and this was a good night for them to walk. They appeared eager to do so. A restless rustling of leaves, the creaking of branches, these were sounds that came from within them in the silence of the night. Occasionally, other strollers passed me in the dark. It was still quite early, just 8 o'clock, and some people were on their way home. Others were walking into town for a taste of the bright lights, shops, and restaurants. On the unlit road, I could not recognize them. They did not notice me. I was reminded of an old song from my childhood. Softly, I began humming the tune, and soon the words came back to me. We three, we are not a crowd. We three, we are not even company. We three, my echo, my shadow, and me. We three, we are not a crowd. We are not even company. My echo, my shadow, and me. So I was humming this tune. I looked down at my shadow, moving silently beside me. We take our shadows for granted, don't we? There they are, the uncomplaining companions of a lifetime, mute and helpless, witnesses to our every act of commission or omission. On this bright moonlit night, I could not help noticing you, Shadow, and I was sorry that you had to see so much that I was ashamed of, but glad, too, that you were around when I had my small triumphs. And what of my echo? I thought of calling out to see if my call came back to me, but I refrained from doing so as I did not wish to disturb the perfect stillness of the mountains or the conversations of the trees. The road wound up the hill and leveled out at the top, where it became a ribbon of moonlight, entwined between tall devdars. A flying squirrel glided across the road, leaving one tree for another. A nightjar called. The rest was silence. The old cemetery loomed up before me. There were many old graves, some large and monumental, and there were a few recent graves too, for this cemetery was still in use. I could see flowers scattered on one of them, a few late dahlias and scarlet salvia. Further on, near the boundary wall, part of the cemetery's remaining wall had collapsed in the heavy monsoon rains. Some of the tombstones had come down with the wall. One grave lay exposed, a rotting coffin and a few scattered bones were the only relics of someone who had lived and loved like you and me. Part of the tombstone lay beside the road, but the lettering had worn away. I'm not normally a morbid person, but something made me stoop and pick up a smooth, round shard of bone, probably part of a skull. When my hand closed over it, the bone crumbled into fragments. I let them fall to the grass, dust to dust. And from somewhere not too far away came the sound of someone whistling. At first I thought it was another late evening stroller whistling to himself as much as I had been humming my old song. But the whistler approached quite rapidly. The whistling was loud and cheerful. A boy on a bicycle sped past. I had only a glimpse of him before his cycle went weaving through the shadows on the road. But he was back again in a few minutes, and this time he stopped a few feet away from me and gave me a quizzical half smile. A slim, dusky boy of 14 or 15, he wore a school blazer and a yellow scarf. His eyes were pools of liquid moonlight. You don't have a bell on your cycle, I said. He said nothing, just smiled at me with his head a little to one side. I put out my hand and I thought he was going to take it. But then quite suddenly he was off again, whistling cheerfully, though rather tunelessly. A whistling schoolboy, a bit late for him to be out, but he seemed to be an independent sort. The whistling grew fainter, then faded away altogether. A deep sound-denying silence fell upon the forest. My shadow and I walked home. Next morning, I woke to a different kind of whistling, the song of the thrush outside my window. It was a wonderful day. The sunshine was warm and sensuous, and I longed to be out in the open. But there was work to be done, proofs to be corrected, letters to be written, and it was several days before I could walk to the top of the hill, to that lonely, tranquil resting place under the devdars. It seemed to me ironic that those who had the best view of the glistening snow-capped peaks were all buried several feet underground. Some repair work was going on. The retaining wall of the cemetery was being shored up. But the overseer told me that there was no money to restore the damaged grave. With the help of the chowkidar, I returned the scattered bones to a little hollow under the collapsed masonry and left some money with him so that he could have the open grave bricked up. The name on the gravestone had worn away, but I could make out a date. 20 November 1950, some 50 years ago, but not too long ago, as gravestones go. I found the burial register in the church vestry and turned back the yellowing pages to 1950. When I was just a schoolboy myself, I found the name there, Michael Datta, aged 15, and the cause of the death, road accident. Well, I could only make guesses and note and to turn conjecture into certainty. I would have to find an old resident who might remember the boy or the accident. There was old Miss Marley at Pine Top, a retired teacher from Woodstock. She had a wonderful memory and had lived in the hill station for more than half a century. White-haired and smooth-cheeked, her bright blue eyes full of curiosity, she gazed benignly at me through her old-fashioned pince. I don't know the pronunciation, Pincnez, that is the specs which you pinch on your nose. Michael was a charming boy, full of exuberance, always ready to oblige. I had only to mention that I needed a newspaper or an aspirin, and he'd be off on his bicycle, swooping down these steep roads with great abandon. But these hills roads with their sudden corners weren't meant for racing around on a bicycle. They were widening our roads for motor traffic, and a truck was coming uphill loaded with rubble when Michael came round a bend and smashed headlong into that truck. He was rushed to the hospital, and the doctors did their best, but he did not recover consciousness. Of course, you must have seen his grave. That's why you are here. His parents, they left shortly afterwards. Went abroad, I think. A charming boy, Michael, but just a bit too reckless. You would have liked him, I think. I did not see the phantom bicycle rider again for some time, although I felt his presence on more than one occasion. And when on a cold winter's evening I walked past that lonely cemetery, I thought I heard him whistling far away, but he did not manifest himself. Perhaps it was only the echo of a whistle in communion with my insubstantial shadow. It was several months before I saw that smiling face again. And then it came at me out of the mist as I was walking home in drenching monsoon rain. I had been to a dinner party at the old community center, and I was returning home along a very narrow, precipitous path known as the Eyebrow. A storm had been threatening all evening. A heavy mist had settled on the hillside. It was so thick that the light from my torch simply bounced off it. The sky blossomed with sheet lightning and thunder rolled over the mountains. The rain became heavier. I moved slowly forward, carefully, hugging the hillside. There was a clap of thunder, and then I saw him emerge from the mist and stand in my way, the same slim, dark youth who had materialized near the cemetery. He did not smile. Instead, he put up his hand and waved at me. I hesitated, stood still. The mist lifted a little, and I saw the path had and I hesitated, stood still. The mist lifted a little, and I saw that the path had disappeared. There was a gaping emptiness a few feet in front of me, and then a drop of over 100 feet to the rocks below. As I stepped back, clinging to a thorn bush for support, the boy vanished. I stumbled back to the community center and spent the night on a chair in the library. I did not see him again. But weeks later, when I was down with a severe bout of flu, I heard him again from my sick bed, whistling beneath my window. Was he calling to me to join him? I wondered. Or was he just trying to reassure me that all was well? I got out of bed and looked out, but I saw no one. From time to time, I heard his whistling, but as I got better, it grew fainter until it ceased altogether. Fully recovered, I renewed my old walks to the top of the hill, but although I lingered near the cemetery until it grew dark and paced up and down the deserted road, I did not see or hear the whistler again. I felt lonely, in need of a friend, even if it was only a phantom bicycle rider. But there was only the trees. And so every evening I walk home in the darkness, singing the old refrain. We three, we are not alone. We are not even company. My echo, my shadow, and my me. We three, we are not alone. We are not even company. My echo, my shadow, and me. That's a short story by Ruskin Bond. And the setting is in the hills below the Himalayas, where he was living in Mussoorie or Shimla or some hill station in the lower Himalayas. That's an old stay. This is about 150, 200 years old, this setting. I hope you liked it. Bye. Thank you.